You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast. My name's Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. What are we talking about today? We're talking about CRMs and why they don't work right. Because I'll tell you what it comes down to: the lack of coaching, the lack of a sales process. That's what CRMs get wrong. And we wonder why salespeople and sales managers don't like CRMs. But that's the topic. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Joining me today, Paul Fuller, Membrane, and wow, it's really a kind of a cool conversation. So, hey, why am I talking? Let's get the show going right now.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Hey, I am Mark Hunter. Of course, you already know that. We're talking about CRMs, why they don't work right. It's all about the process. Paul Fuller is my guest today. Let's get Paul in here. Paul, welcome. And let me just say before you do it, Paul's carried a bag. He knows what it's like to have to deal with CRM systems. He knows what it's like to sell. He knows what it's like. And he knows, more importantly, the value of having the right process. And that's why he's with Membrane today. And we'll talk about Membrane more as we go through the show. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Why are CRM systems so bad?
Oh, well, most of them are built on a legacy concept, right? Then this legacy concept is that salespeople want to enter data for their bosses to see.
Hold it. They want to or they have
to? Maybe it's they have to.
Man.
But yeah, no, it is. And that's one of the fundamental flaws these days in the CRM is, most of them are built on this big clunky old database that's focused on how do I collect all the data that the boss needs to see or the board needs to see. They're not built on this idea that I can actually help a salesperson sell and progress throughout a deal. So they don't get used a whole lot.
Well, I'm going to share you something. I was speaking with a CRO the other day, and he made the comment that his VP of sales had not been into their own CRM system in over 2 months. Now, sit there and think about this. This is at the top of the food chain, that the VP of sales has not been in the CRM system. That means they must not see value. Now, we know there are some CRM systems out there that deliver value and so forth, but the challenge is the salesperson doesn't understand it. And more importantly, not only does the salesperson not understand it, but the sales manager says, I got to do this and this and this and this and this. How do we make the CRM system more efficient, more effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think to answer the question, I'm gonna step back a couple of steps actually. I think the first thing that anybody needs to decide to do is you need to decide on a methodology. Like that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. And I've like I said, Mark, you said I've carried a bag for a long time. I've been a sales leader in my own right in a number of different areas, and even built a sales as a service company. Right. One of the major things that people get wrong is they don't understand the importance of having a methodology, a sales methodology that's unique to the company. They can take it from any one of the ones that's out there, right? But being able to craft it and make it unique for the customer and the buying experience. The second thing that comes with that, and I differentiate these two, right? I differentiate methodology between how I have that conversation, how I have that engagement with somebody, and how I help them buy. The process is the second thing, though. There is an internal process that every company needs to have to be able to follow for everything. I was just writing a paper on forecasting for your forecast to be accurate. For anything, you need to understand what are the milestones and the metrics that you need to have within that process and the steps to make that happen. And only then is a CRM of any value. And I have a story about this. If I could share with you for a second, Mark.
Go ahead.
So, and I have personally seen this a number of times, but recently ran into a company, $70 million in venture capital funding. Company will not be named, right? But they got a hot product. They're on their Series C. They just got $70 million and they're going to triple down. They're going to triple down on people, right? Get out to the market as fast as you possibly can. We're going to hire, tons and tons of people. We're going to actually overtake the market. What they never slowed down to do is they had their reps working out of spreadsheets. So they never slowed down to say, what is our methodology? How are we gonna look at sales and think about sales? What is the process that we want people to take? And then what are the tools we want to deliver to them?
Wow. Okay. Let's unpack that. Go through those again, because again, you said some powerful things there, and I want to build on it. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about methodology. Methodology is, in my own personal methodology, I call vibe, right? It's how we have a conversation with people. So vision, impacts and implications, benefits and barriers, and how do we execute? So vision is the current state and the future state. Those are the things we need to learn to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
We then need to have a process that enables a rep to follow that methodology consistently. And that process should be enabled with training. It should be enabled with scripts. It should be enabled with content pieces and all of that to be able to follow that methodology. So, and then the critical thing there is, how do I then embed that into a tool, right? And I'm a membrane, a file, right? I spent millions of dollars and thousands of man hours trying to make other CRMs do exactly what I wanted it to do and build it to be exactly what I wanted to do. But I was never able to fully drive and embed a methodology compared with that process into the right tool. And those are the things that are critical if you are going to get the outcomes that you desire.
Okay. Now, what I see happening a lot of times is companies have a process. We'll go and use Salesforce and HubSpot, okay, as the two big kids, because they are the two big kids out there. And people will sit there and say, well, we're going to take this and we're going to take it off the shelf. We're going to adapt. But so many times what happens is they still wind up force fitting their process into what that tool can do. Mm-hmm. I've seen this in Salesforce. I've seen this in HubSpot a lot. And so what happens is it begins to change then the methodology. And ultimately what happens is the tail begins wagging the dog. And again, the fundamental problem I see with this is that organizations get so process driven based off their CRM system that they lose all focus of training, they lose all focus of development, of truly understand, which I think comes back to the methodology. Agree, disagree, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I work diligently I've been in both of those systems for a greater part of my career. What you end up happening is, they say the process exists outside of, is kind of this ethereal. It's the PowerPoint document that tells somebody, here's the fields you need to fill out, mm-hmm. right, to be able to take things to the next stage. And it's not intuitive. And again, it forces, so managers manage by data entry, right, instead of by next steps, instead of by things that actually help, instead of by coaching. They manage by, geez, I see that you have this in this opportunity page, it's 60% filled out and we haven't done these 7 fields, but those 7 fields are just fields. They don't help you do anything to move a deal forward. So the conundrum that people get into is the management, but data is brilliant. We need data. We absolutely have to get data, but to take data and make that really gets put on a pedestal rather than the sale, right?
Oh man, you are ringing the bell right now. I love that. Yeah, so true. Because this is so funny, and it struck me that maybe what we need to do is we need to strip our CRM systems down and literally start with zero, and then build our way into it. Brad writes, in my opinion, we define objectives and align CRM usage. Totally agree. But so many times that CRM just doesn't quite. And your point, the manager is so caught up in the CRM system that there's no time for coaching. There's no time for development. There's none of those other tools in there that are lacking to really help the salesperson become who they should be.
Well, let's take that a step further. Meaning, we have all these forms, we have all these fields. Shouldn't the CRM be able to enable that coaching, to accelerate that coaching, right? Shouldn't that CRM be able to do some of that? Hey, fill out this field. It's other than it's a required field, but say you don't have some specific information, shouldn't the CRM be able to then say, oh, this doesn't fall in your weighted pipeline, and do that as a part of your sales methodology that you outline? And so that's the paradigm shift that Membrane makes, and I love it because I'm a sales methodology and process geek. That's what I do. That's what I built for pretty much the entirety of my career. And so to be able to outline a process that has training embedded, that has the next actionable steps that are real actionable steps that are right there that a rep can take, along with a lot of the coaching, along with a lot of the material, that's what I do every single day. And finding that flow and that balance, it's more balance between the right amount of process and the right amount of data versus the overwhelm of process and data is really critical to help people sell.
Okay, you just hit on another thing. It's the simplicity of the data. And of course, you are the chief revenue officer. You are head of sales at Membrane, membrane.com. Great CRM tool. But you're talking about the simplicity. And again, yes. I see so many times what happens is just because the data can be measured doesn't mean it should be measured. Just because the data could be entered, it doesn't need to be entered. And we have to ask ourselves, this is the breakdown I see in CRM systems, is that so much of the benefits still, and we're probably on CRM system 4.0 right now. Most companies have gone through almost 4 generations of CRM systems, if you've been using it kind of from the beginning. We're still cranking out so many tools and things that benefit other departments, other areas. And I get it. I understand the need for it. But the salesperson sits there and says, am I just a lackey that's sitting here putting data into a system? Where's the benefit for me?
Yeah, and I rail on this a little bit. I showed a picture the other day of a Hydra. And this is one of the things I see really eye to eye with our, George Bruntine is our founder, great writer, great sales, absolute sales mind. But he likens what has happened with a lot of the CRM ecosystems is that Hydra, which is it has become a platform as a service, rather than a sales software as a service, right? And that is what is meant to sell. So you're meant to put on all these million add-ons, right? And then you train on all these million add-ons that your team doesn't even, you leverage maybe 3 or 4 of them. And this is just what we see in market. And there's a lot of over expenditure and a lot of waste on those type of things. But every time you add one of those add-ons, it becomes more complex. Every time you add one, it's another software, and people don't understand that drain that puts on the rep. There's inside sales reps spend about 30% of their time selling. And
I'd argue that that's too high a number, because I don't even think it's 30%. That's just my perspective.
Yeah. And most of it is on figuring out how to tie together and use the tools and use all the different tools and lugging it. There is a technology overload that people face today.
Well, and I think this is the number one thing that impacts and limits sales managers, sales leaders, from truly being able to coach their people, because they're so caught up in the process. They're so caught up in doing all this other stuff that they don't have that time. Now, again, one of the things we have to look at is how do we create expediency? How do we create efficiency? And if I can have coaching tools built into my systems, and hey, Salesforce and HubSpot, all the big kids, they've all got them. They've got all those apps you can get. But again, like go back to what you said, does it become so complicated that we don't use it? I mean, I've got systems in my own company that I don't use. And I always scratch myself, why do we have these systems? And some person on my team will say, well, I use it every 6 months. Okay, I live in Texas. Is that the reason I keep a snow shovel in my garage? I don't know.
Well, Mark, you're dead on, right? There's 4 key levers, and I'm taking this directly from the Cracking the Sales Management Code, right? The four key levers that we need to be able to coach on and pull at any given time, right? And why doesn't a CRM just tell us these naturally at any given time? So sales project created, win rate, average deal size, and sales cycle. You get better at 8% at any of those. If you get better at 8% at all of them, you double your sales, right? And so what is really critical is breaking down the elements of the pipeline to be able to then create process around those things and coach on them very effectively, right? So what's getting in the way of us creating sales projects? Is it qualifying? Is it the skill of having that initial conversation? Win rate, where do things fall off in the pipeline? How do they fall off in the pipeline? Now, I shouldn't need, and this is me, I shouldn't need a developer to get me those things that should be natural into a sales process and a sales cycle that I can coach on all the time, right? I should be able to just find that and see it, calculate it, understand it. Average deal size, are we going after deals that are too small? How do I coach on that? There's a very good way. Maybe our target 100 is off, right? So those 4 things I think are at the center, and designing a CRM to get you to those 4 things from your prospecting, from your pipeline, from how you manage growth, and then be able to help you coach on all of those things is absolutely, I see it as game changing and critical because of what I used to do and what I still do. I mean, I had to train hundreds of salespeople across dozens of industries in a sales as a service company, right? And so I needed a process by which to do this and by which to train them, and a methodology. And I needed those statistics. So that should be a simple exercise, but it's not. It generally becomes an exercise of having a base, needing to plug and play all these things on top of it. And it becomes really challenging for a rep to actually use.
Well, it is. And I go back and I just flashed back through my mind twice in my career. I've been in charge of putting in place large sales organizations. One was 700, another one was 400 in the course of less than a year. And you got to get them up to speed working because the board is demanding results. Mm-hmm. And the only solution there was to keeping it as simple as possible. I want you to go back, if you will. You mentioned 4 things. List those 4 things out again, because they're worthwhile for people to take notes. Unless you're driving right now, don't take notes. Let's listen to the replay again. What were those 4 things?
Have your AI translate the notes. Yep. So there's four key stats. And again, I'm not the author of these. I didn't design them. I didn't figure, but sales projects created, right? So that is, what is the inflow? And so there's a lot of ways to get to that. People look at the number of leads created, the number of conversations they have per lead, how many conversations it takes to get there. But the ultimate measurement there, right, is what are the number of sales opportunities that you deem as qualified opportunities? How many of those have you created and put in your pipeline, right? As a revenue.
How many have you created? I love that. Not somebody else given to you, but you created. Thank you. I love that.
The second is win rate. So of that, right? And there's a bunch of statistics that you get along the way, right? But that you can look at, and bunch of different leading indicators. But how many of those deals am I winning? And research is showing that in SaaS software, it's like 18% at most for most companies. And win rates are going down in this environment, right? They're not going up. We have a ton of people. We have a ton of tech. Win rates are going down. But win rate is how many of those opportunities that you're putting in your pipeline you actually win in, right? The third is average deal size. So, there are many companies, and the days of SaaS doing this are starting to slow down in a big way, right? But there was a lot of companies that they wanted their average deal size to be tiny, and it was just about tons and tons and tons of market share, right? Because they could afford to lose money because they were getting a ton of investment, and they just wanted to get a multiple. But if you're looking at average deal size, your average deal size is the sustainability of your company, right? And the sustainability of your revenue, because it tells you how many of those sales projects coming in the front, how many you need to win at a certain level to hit the revenue numbers that you need. So, and you could coach a rep. Reps can get better at average deal size, right? And it's an absolute critical stat. And you can coach them by doing very simple things like we've talked about before, Mark. What's our top 100 target list? How are we going to qualify these things how do we radically disqualify out of our pipeline instead of taking everything in? And the fourth is sales cycle time. So if I can increase the number of sales projects, if I can increase my win rate, if I can increase my average deal size, and I can shorten my sales cycle time, and each of those, if I just improve that by, I believe the number is 8%, you're doubling revenue in a year. So it's not massive shifts that you're looking for. It's how you simplify, get things out of the way, reduce friction, increase impact, and do that with a CRM system that helps instead of a CRM system that demands time.
I love what you're saying there, because it is not exponential change, but exponential change occurs because of minor shifts. You threw out that 8% number, and yeah, I've run the numbers, and it really is amazing. If you just change a few elements, just by a few percentage points, it is amazing at what happens to your top line and your top line sales and your bottom line profit because of the efficiencies of your selling process. It's absolutely huge. Hey, we've been talking today with Paul Fuller. He's the Chief Revenue Officer and assortment of other things at Membrane. Tell the audience real quick, what is Membrane all about? Because I love the tool. I love it.
Yeah, well, Mark, I'm going to tell them in the context of Sales Logic, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
So we just had a great conference the other day, a great session with Mark and Meredith at Sales Logic, and we were there. What we were able to do is we're able to build the Sales Logic methodology into Membrane. So Membrane is a B2B sales enablement CRM. We focus on complex sales. And what we're able to do is we work with great partners to be able to very easily build in their sales methodology, their training, and their process into the CRM that's simple to use, easy to use, et cetera. If you're not working with a Mark, we can either connect you with somebody like a Mark, or you can build your own custom processes in there really easily and set. The way we think about CRM is it's a process builder, and the three key functions of the processes that we need to have are built into it. So we need processes and repeatability and discipline for prospecting. We need processes and repeatability and a methodology for our sales pipeline. And to grow accounts, we need processes, repeatability, and discipline for how we grow our accounts, along with all that data. So Membrane takes that, puts that in one wrapper for people, enables training and coaching right within the tool instead of having to house it in an LMS or something like that, and makes it really simple for salespeople to use.
I love it. And that fits the question that comes in right now from Marcus Norman. He says, how do you stop CRM completion being drudgery? And it's just what you just described, because you're making it so simplistic, and giving them people the tools. And like, Marcus says, if you do that, it would then become a value creator for the business and ultimately the client. Spot on.
And I'm going to add a quick story on that. I'm going to mention Nick Macero, who's one of the reps on our team, right? And I think I'm not any different. I have to use a CRM as a CRO, right? Nick came to me the other day. He's like, I love this. This is awesome. This actually helps me uncover what I need to do in a deal, and I actually can think it through. and it forces me to think it through. So it doesn't become drudgery. It becomes a process that can actually be followed to help them win deals. If it becomes drudgery, we're not doing it right, right? If we're doing it in a way that somebody says, oh, I found out these three pieces of information, now CRM, let's, how do I get to the next spot? And that CRM can help you do that along with your coach. You're in a win-win.
Great. Hey, we need to wrap up the show. We're in 15 seconds into overtime right now. So I want to say thank you so much to Paul Fuller for being on the show. Membrane, we'll put a link in the show notes, but do want you to check it out. Hey, what is the Sales Center podcast all about each week? It's giving you 2 episodes. One, a short episode of me just diving into a real quick topic. And the second episode is a longer form like this where we interview a sales expert. The Sales Center podcast is designed to help you become the salesperson that you're capable of, because we all have much more potential. Hey, with that, I want to say thank you for listening, and most of all, great selling.